How's everybody doing? Terrific. Good. Well, welcome. My name's Bill Kearney, and I'm glad you guys are here tonight. This is College Planning. This is our first session of the year. I own a local company, local financial advising firm here in Mooresville that I've been doing for right about 10 years now, and we've been doing college planning about that whole time. And so you kind of might want to wonder how financial planning and all that works into college planning and what we do. Just a little bit of background on my company and me is that we work in areas like retirement planning, retirement income planning, 401k management. So we do a lot of asset-based things. But about 10 years ago, as I got into this business, I realized there was a big void in this area of college planning. And I realized that this particular period in people's lives was something that was going to greatly affect them as they went forward into their future, in their retirement planning, because it's very costly, for one thing. And I also realized, I kind of tied my own personal experiences into this. I'll tell you just a quick story as background. I went to college in the late 90s. Okay, I went to the University of Tennessee. And just to give you some perspective on how long ago this was, I was a freshman when Peyton Manning was a senior at Tennessee, okay, back when we used to play football. And it was a great time to be at Tennessee, but when I went through that process of selecting colleges, I was an athlete, and so I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to a lot of the academic parts of the college selection process. And I really didn't make up my mind on where I wanted to go to school until spring break of my senior year. Okay, I went and visited Tennessee, took a visit over there and loved it, and walked into the admissions office and said, what do I have to do to come to school here? That kind of thing. And they gave me an application, and I was a pretty good student. I was 10th in my class. I went to North Mecklenburg High School, it's down the road. There was 1,000 kids in my graduating class back then. It was big, because Lake Norman wasn't here. Huff High School wasn't there. Hopewell didn't exist. Okay, so we were it. And we had a lot of kids in our class. So I fill out the application, and I get home, and there's a message on this thing called an answering machine. Anybody remember the answering machines? Because we didn't have cell phones. So there was an answering machine, a message from the admissions office at Tennessee that said, hey, we got your application. We'd love to have you come to school here. And that was it. Now, I never asked for anything in regards to financial aid. I was an out-of-state student. Never asked any questions related to that. And now, what I'm going to teach you guys tonight, going through all this, I realized that my family greatly overpaid for Tennessee. Okay, greatly overpaid for it. And I've given this speech for almost 10 years. One time, my parents came to see what I was doing, and I realized in the middle of this that I was telling this story, and they were involved in it. And my dad raised his hand in the back, and I got a little nervous, and I said, yes, sir, and called on him, and he said, I'd like my money back. Okay? So the point is that I think I'm about the last group of students, and this is 20-some years ago, that could go through the college process kind of haphazardly and not have a plan of attack. How many people, is everybody in here class of 2020? Any 2019 students? A couple of them. Okay, it's not too late. But one of the things we always talk about, you'll hear me say it a lot, is use time to your advantage. We certainly work and can help and guide class of 2019 kids, but we're starting now on the 2020 kids because you really have a lot you have to do to get ready for all this. Tonight is not about my company. This is not a sales presentation. I'm not selling anything. I'm just giving you information. Okay? And I'm going to go pretty quickly. So over the next hour, hour and a half, I'm going to cover a lot. And I would suggest in your packets there, one of the things you'll see, there's a note page. We can make this interactive. I'll answer questions as we go through. But I do want to make good use of your time. So if we start maybe getting too many of those, I may stop that and just say, hey, I'll be here at the end. Ask me whatever you want. Okay? Well, let me tell you, the packet that you have, if you haven't kind of leafed through this just yet, there's a couple of things in here I want to point you to. This one that says College Planning Workshop, this is what we're going to use tonight. And there's an activity in here that we'll do together a little bit later. So that's the one you'll want to have out in front of you. The take-home packet is just a thank you note, thanking you for coming tonight, and also a couple of articles. And I'm going to reference a couple of other articles tonight and what we talk about as well for some information. And then the other thing that I do for everyone who comes to one of these events is I offer you, if you want to come in and sit down one-on-one with me and kind of talk about your situation and ask me questions, that kind of thing, you can come in and do that. I call it part 2 of what we do. This is kind of part 1, and that's part 2. So you have the opportunity to come in and spend an hour or 45 minutes with me and kind of go through where you are. And I'll tell you the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to say, on how all this really works too. Okay? Any questions before I get started on anything here? Let me make sure that all my equipment works. This one's brand new today. All right, y'all bear with me 1 second. It was working before everybody came in. This is your typical presentation disclaimers, which is telling you that everything I'm going to talk about tonight is of a general nature. I'm not giving anybody in the room specific advice on what to do or what not to do, specific tax advice, specific financial advice. That's all being recorded, so now I've covered myself there. However, if you do hear some things tonight, you apply them to your situation, they work out greatly, and you'd love to give me or my company credit for that, we'll be happy to accept that from you. Okay? Other than that, we never had this conversation. Oh no, please tell me this is not going to do this. It's supposed to work from 100 feet away. I spent like $80 on it today. It's going back to the store tomorrow.
$6 each.
Yeah, you know. Can you lift the computer up and maybe up on the top there so maybe it can see this little guy? I don't know what all the blinking means. That's scaring me a little bit. Sorry, y'all. We'll get there. I may have to just shout at y'all from the back of the room. No, I'll get it. Hold on. Now, the lovely lady you met in the back of the room is my wife. She also helps me out at seminars and some of the office work that we do. Her name is Natasha. And she may also be doing this entire presentation from back there as well. We've done this before, but we're a long way away. And I tried this today. It's supposed to work, so we'll see. If not, she can just advance it. There aren't a ton of slides to go through anyhow. So, but this, let me tell you what I'm going to tell you first. The goals for today. Just a look at the cost for college, kind of get you guys grounded on where we are with all of that. Some discussions on standardized tests, criteria for selecting colleges, what you need to know about student selection, the admissions process, paying for this, and then I'm going to give you guys a solid timeline. Now, if you have a phone and you want to take pictures of anything that's on the screen, please feel free to do so. Okay? That won't bother me a bit. I'm going to give you one or two real-world examples. I want to tell you a little bit about my company. Now, I'm giving you a lot of information on the student positioning part of college. That is not what I do. I actually have a team of folks who help me with this whole college planning process. They do career positioning, they do college selections, they do all sorts of work like that. I've been working with these people for 10 years. And they're very good at what they do. And I have learned enough from them to tell you what I'm going to tell you tonight. My specialty is more in the financial area, paying for school, financial aid form filing, why we do that, how we do it correctly, all of that. That's my area. So we'll be covering both of those topics tonight. And the point behind all of this is that you really need to have student positioning and family financial positioning working together. If there's one thing you come away tonight from all of this is that college is a business. It is a big business. It is a very profitable business. we're probably all in the wrong business, okay? And I want you to know that so that when you approach these schools and start doing visits and start making decisions on how to select them, you know what's going on. Because they have one of the best marketing plans, best marketing programs I've ever seen. Especially from the moment you step foot on campus, the entire thing is a marketing proposal to you. But what you have to remember is that the colleges lack one very important thing, and they have to have this to exist. It's not money. What do they need every single year? Students. And so what I want to teach you guys tonight too, you'll see a slide called The Tale of Two Boats, is how they leverage students for their purposes. Okay, and I'll give you some quotes and things that financial aid officers have either told me or I have read in print. Okay? All right, we may need to, I don't know why it's not working, but cost for college today. So, I don't know if anybody saw the scroll that was going through originally, but the costs for school have gone up about 450% in the last 30 years. Remember, I said in the late 90s I was probably the last group of kids who could go through kind of haphazardly and not bankrupt yourself or your family. When I went to Tennessee, out of state from North Carolina, it was about $16,000 a year. Anybody want to take a guess at what it is right now out of state? Total, all in, tuition, room and board, everything.
48.
What was that?
48.
48, that's right there. Did you look at it already? Because it's expensive. I mean, there's no way without an athletic scholarship I would go there from North Carolina or some type of academic scholarship. So it's gone up tremendously, and if anybody feels like your savings haven't really kept up with the cost of school, or you feel a little bit unprepared in that area, don't be surprised. Our median incomes over that same period of time have only gone up about 147%. So it's virtually impossible, unless you are increasing your savings for school by 6 to 10% a year, you have not been able to keep up. It's very difficult. Okay? Now, the average cost for a public university in the United States is right around $24,000, $25,000 a year now. The average private university is over $40,000, and the elite private schools are between $50,000 and $60,000 a year. Many are approaching $70,000 to $80,000 a year. What we like to say when we're looking at this from a financial perspective is that this is akin to the sticker price on a car. Not everybody pays the sticker price on a car. Actually, we hope none of us do, right? But unfortunately, a lot of times the way we approach buying college is the exact opposite way we would approach buying a car. We're not very strategic about it. And so many times people overpay for school unnecessarily. In addition, if you go on campus, when you become a freshman in school, you have to realize that all the other students, most of them all pay different amounts. It's the same thing as flying on an airplane or buying a mattress, right? Everybody seems to pay different, and we don't seem to pay the same things at school. And there's a reason for that. And so we're going to go through some of those reasons tonight. Obviously, we don't want the parents to end up like this, but part of our purpose behind all of this is, can you advance that? There. This is to give you some perspective on the cost for college. This is Yale in 1970. So the annual tuition for Yale was about $2,500 back in 1970. So you can go to Yale for $2,500 a year. Minimum wage back then was $1.45, so you could work under 5 hours a day and pay your tuition at Yale. Now, this is 2014 numbers, it's gone up more than this. But tuition at Yale is $45,800. Minimum wage was $725. Now we know that's gone up a little bit. If you'll click the slide, you'd have to work 17 hours a day now to pay for your tuition at Yale, right? And in addition to that, how many hours are there in a day? So you got 7 hours left over, right, to sleep, eat, and go to class. It's impossible, all right? So that's where it's gone up. It's gone up very rapidly with all that. And most students, obviously, that go to Yale don't pay that sticker price. That's just to give you some perspective behind that as well. All right, I want to talk about standardized tests for just a minute. And these are the two places you want to go if you have not looked into taking standardized tests just yet. Okay, the SAT is thecollegeboard.org, and the ACT is actstudent.org, or it should be actstudent.org is what that should say on there. Now, a couple things to keep in mind here. These tests are not given every single month throughout the year. They rotate months usually. If you're in junior year right now, you want to think about how you're going to plan this out. I know my student positioning team would recommend that juniors take the SAT and the ACT once, sometime during the fall semester, each of them. You don't really have to put prep work in to do this. What they're trying to figure out is a baseline on these tests and figure out if you naturally test better on one versus the other. The reason for that is the colleges will accept either one of these tests for admissions. And if you figure out now that naturally I do better on the ACT because it has a science section in it, well then now you've got a little bit smaller boulder to push uphill. And then you can maybe use that and figure out prep work you're going to do for ACT going forward. Does that make sense? Now you have the whole spring semester to start actually attacking the test. Vice versa with SAT doesn't matter. So you can do it either way, but the key here is use time to your advantage. If you can get the test knocked out in junior year, that will help. They have since added a test in August or the August time frame, whereas before the test used to end in June. You didn't have another test session until September of senior year. So again, I would start to map out your plan here on when you're going to do this and how you're going to do it. Super scoring. Is everybody aware of how super scoring on the SAT works? Pretty much. Do I need to go through that?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So super scoring is something that pretty much all of the colleges do with the SAT. Not many colleges actually do it with the ACT. And the reason is that the way the composite scoring works on the ACT, it's a little bit harder to super score your tests. Now you can go to Google or one of your search engines and you can Google ACT super scoring, list of schools, and a list will come up. And it changes every year as to which colleges do that, but it might be a good idea to know if the school you're looking at does super scoring on the ACT. Most of your schools will do super scoring on the SAT. Now let's say that we take the test the first time and we're trying to figure out how we're going to do here. So we take the test the first time, we get a 600 on math and a 500 on reading. That is a total score of 1,100. So you say, all right, well, I'm going to go back and I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to get that reading score up. You take the test the second time and now you get a 500 on math and a 600 on reading. You're like, I cannot catch a break. Because that's still what? That's still 1,100, right? Well, actually, it's a 1,200. Because what they do is they take the 600 from the first and the 600 from the second and put those together. Now, why does a college do that? Any ideas?
So they can boost their freshman numbers.
That is one reason. He said so that they can boost their incoming freshman numbers, their average scores, right? If they could do that, what does that mean they can do? I mean, what do we think when we see a higher average score each year?
Better school.
Better school, and then what can they do?
Charge more.
Charge more. Okay, that's the business aspect of it. Now, there's another aspect that they do. That's exactly right. That's one reason. Does anybody know the other reason? The other reason is they're trying to give a little bit of grace to the students in that you may not have felt your best that first test. Or the room may have been really hot. Or you forgot your calculator, or whatever, right? So it gives them a better composite of that student on different days taking that test. But a lot of people don't actually know that they do this super scoring, so you'll look at that average score, like you said, and say, wow, that's a really good school. Maybe, maybe not. Now, they all do it, so all of their averages are weighted up, but it is the way they do it for their marketing purposes, but it also gives them good information over a couple of different sessions. I know that my team will tell you that really after about the third time taking a test, no matter how much prep work, you're probably going to be where you are. Fourth and fifth, I mean, it's not really going to improve it very much. It may actually hurt you a little bit from an admission standpoint, so you're really kind of looking at 2 to 3 times to take it. I wanted to mention to everybody too, one of our partners in the field is a company down in Huntersville called Omega Learning Center. And the man's name there that runs it is Steve Gilbert. And Steve does diagnostics testing once a month. And so you can go down to Omega and actually sit, and they will proctor a test for you. I can't remember exactly what it costs, but it's very inexpensive. And it's just like taking either an SAT or ACT. You can pick which one you want to do. So this would be a good way to knock out one of your tests in the fall, by the way. They do them monthly. I want to say it's the first Saturday of every month. And then they score it, and you'll get your results within a day or two. Whereas when you take these tests normally, it takes about 30 days to get your scores back. Now, they're a tutoring center, so they do have services if you want help. They'll tell you about that, but you're not obligated to do anything with them. But they've been doing this for a long time, and that's a great way for students to go in and get one of these tests knocked out inexpensively and get some really good data behind what you're doing on the test, maybe what you're doing wrong. All right? The other thing I want to tell you, and you may want to go test drive this tutoring service, is something called ePrep. Has anybody heard of ePrep? ePrep. You can go to ePrep.com and test drive their system. ePrep is a program that was developed by a couple of Princeton graduates. It's a great program. Students seem to love it. We've been using it through our practice for years with kids. It combines the idea of being in a course or sitting in a classroom with online study, with book study, and it gives you video tutorials when you get things wrong. It's really dense in its material. It's also very intuitive, so if you're using it and you're getting questions right on the math part, it's going to start feeding you more reading questions and back and forth to kind of build you that way. And a couple other things is you can put in the date you're going to take the test, and it will backfill and tell you exactly how much work you have to do between now and then. And parents can put their email address in, and they have what's called a watchdog feature. So instead of asking your student every day, are you using that program that we paid for, you'll get email updates with their progress through the system. So that's a cool one. You might want to check that out. Again, like when students get something wrong, they get video answers that explain why they got it wrong. And as long as they have an iPhone or internet access, they can use it anywhere. So that's a really good one to keep in mind on there as well. All right. This is going to require us to take out the packet. Does everybody have a pen they can maybe make some notes with? If you will turn to page 5. Actually, yeah, page 5 in your packet. It says selection criteria at the top. So what I want you guys to do is read through this list on here. It's for the most part alphabetized. And this is the criteria, because we're moving more into the admissions part of what we're doing now. So this is the criteria that would be important to you in selecting a college. What's important? What are you looking for in school? Out of this list, and everything on here is pretty important, right? But what is the most important things to you? Take a minute or two and maybe mark a couple of those, and then we'll see what we came up with. All right, what we come up with? Somebody tell me what's one of the most important things to you in selecting a school. I know somebody selected cost, so you can might as well say that one, right? What else? What's important? Yes, ma'am.
The academic programs that are offered at the university.
That's kind of important, right? It's kind of important. The academic programs, she said. What else?
Financial aid availability.
That's a good one. If cost is a concern, then maybe how do they do financial aid there? Might be a concern. What else?
Environment.
Environment. Okay. What else? Student faculty ratio. What'd you say? Admissions criteria. Okay. Those are all excellent. Anybody want to take a guess at which one is my favorite?
Placement record.
Why did you know that?
Just-
Why is placement record? What is placement record?
It's the school's track record and their ability to place you at graduate schools or get you a job.
Right, exactly. So it's the school's ability to get you a job or place you in grad school, usually within a 6-month period. That's the placement record. Now, why is placement record important?
That's what we're for.
That's their job, right? All right, I don't know if you guys were paying attention. There were some facts that came up on the scroll. I got a book here I'm going to hand out to somebody who can guess this. This is why placement record is important. First of all, what is, right now, the average graduation rate? How many students are graduating? What percentage are graduating in 4 years?
25,
40%.
What'd you say?
25.
He said 25%. You're right. So right now, in the United States, only 25% of Americans, now I neatly placed my business card in a chapter that I co-authored in that book, okay? That is shameless in what I just did there. No, 25% are graduating in 4 years. And even worse than that, only 60% are graduating in 6 years. And I just told you it's gone up how much? 400% in the last 30 years, yet our graduation rates are falling. So maybe one of the very first things I want to know as I'm stepping into this business relationship is, what are we getting for this? Because if you have more than one student, first of all, you've got to come up with a plan to get them through school. Not just to school, but through it. Because when they get there, the colleges are not necessarily, that's not their number one item, is getting you through on time. And there are a number of different reasons why that happens. All right? So we've got all these things happening in the background. We now know, as of tonight, that you're stepping into a business relationship. I think at the very front of that relationship, the best way to get into a good relationship is to know how you're going to get out of it. So in this case, if we're going to get into a relationship with the college, what are we going to get out of this? What's this going to look like on the other side? So you might want to ask that question, and if the placement record isn't good, it's going to be hard to find this information on that school. Let me give you an example of a school that does this, I think, the right way. Anybody here from Delaware? I've only had one person in 10 years raise their hand. There's nothing wrong with Delaware. It's a great state, okay? But not many people are from there. So that means that probably nobody here attended the University of Delaware. Anybody know who the mascot is for the University of Delaware? Blue Hens, there you go.
That's why they don't go.
Yeah, maybe that's kind of holding them back a little bit. But Delaware has on their staff of folks, they have a team made up of 15 people, and their entire job is to go around the country and pitch their junior and senior class to Fortune 500 companies. They literally have a file on all of their students. And they know what these students are majoring in, what fields they want to go in, and what companies hire kids from those fields. And they go out and they do the legwork for you. They have the highest placement record of any college in the United States.
How many students?
And it's it's a pretty big class of students. I don't know the exact population. I'd have to look that up to give you an exact answer. But it's not a private school, it's a public school. But that's their method of attracting. So when people come to visit the University of Delaware, this is what they tell them. Hey, our placement record is 98%. Who just added Delaware to their list now? It's not so funny anymore, is it? Right? Now we all want to be blue hens. But that's the kind of thing you want to know. If a placement record is around 20%, that maybe isn't so good for what you're looking for. It's up to you guys. Just thought you might want to know that.
Do they all publish that information?
They don't all publish it. It's something you may have to ask for. You may need to do some research on your own for that. If it's good, it is something they're going to want to tell you about. That's usually how that works. If it's hard to find, that's usually your first indicator. I've got a second one. It's still not working. And I've done classes here in this spot for the last 4 or 5 years. That's the first time that's happened. Okay, so when we talk about criteria, over the years, our team has heard a number of different things related to how students view the criteria of selecting a college and how parents view the criteria of selecting a college. The good news is those always match up exactly the same, right? You already know what this is going to look like. So students are saying, well, I'm going to go to this school because my boyfriend or my girlfriend or all my friends are going there, right? Education is cool and trendy. It's a party school, don't tell dad. Good sports teams, a bunch of other things like that, right? That's what we hear when we do interviews. Now, parents, you are looking at it from this angle. Right? Quality of education. I went there. It's the only choice you have. Within a 3-hour drive of home and the window sticker. So here's what happens. I mean, first of all, time goes by really fast, doesn't it? I mean, just the other day, they were here. I always tell this story when I do this. When I come here, my wife comes with me, and the grandparents are at home with my 2 boys. They're 11 and 8. Now they're about here. When I first started telling the story, they were down here. Okay? But I do the same thing, like they're right here. And it's going fast for me, too. I'll be sitting in the seats where you are sitting. Just the other day, they were right here. And now you're sitting here listening to this guy ramble on about college. So this is kind of in the background here. This can kind of be a difficult conversation, and maybe we don't know exactly where to start. So I'm going to give you some ideas on where to start with all of this. All right? Let me give you an example of where you might want this to end up. Maybe this is what you want your student to be saying by summertime going into senior year. Mom, Dad, I'm working toward the goal of acceptance by the university, and nothing would warm my heart unless I heard something like this, right? I mean, tears coming down my face. University of Tennessee. Tennessee is well known for its award-winning faculty. Well, hey, there we go. That's not something I said. UT is credited for being one of the best universities in which to study engineering. And by the way, Mom and Dad, they offer one of the best financial aid packages in comparison to their competitors. Who would like to hear your student say something like that? There you go. We're going right? We all want to kind of, what does this tell you? This tells you that your son or daughter has been doing their research. First of all, if you go down to the middle, it says one of the best universities in which to study engineering. Well, maybe this student did some type of career positioning work, right? And kind of figured out what people like me typically end up doing. So that's one thing that happened there. But then they also figured out, well, they've got really good faculty. And those people, not only do they have a good program, but they're going to help me there. So I've done research on that. And then, hey, I think I might match up really well with what they typically take as students for financial aid purposes. Even though it's expensive out of state, maybe we can get it reduced down. See, that's where you want to go over junior year. This is where you want it to end up. Okay? Now, go forward one slide, please. So the first thing you want to do is about the last thing I did as a student. Is this type of work here. Career selection, self-assessments, that type of thing. I don't know if anybody's done that. I don't know if they're doing that this year at school. We use a program called Focus 2. It's a program we created. It tests interest, values, skills, personality, but it's basically the front door to this entire process. So here's how I did it when I went to school. You can come to my office and you can see these degrees, okay? I'm not telling you this to brag because I don't use my degrees. So I went and just majored in things I was interested in. Political science and history. Guess what? We haven't talked about those tonight yet, haven't we? Right? If that wasn't bad enough, once I figured out in senior year that they weren't going to pay me $100,000 a year to I don't know, and I didn't want to teach, I decided to do what? What did I do? I went back to school. That's what you do when you don't know what you're going to do, right? So I went back and I got a master's degree in criminology and public administration. I used that degree for 6 months when I got out of school and hated working for the government. So now, that would be great if the story ends there. The problem is I graduated from my graduate program in 2003, By the way, I paid for that program. And just a little side note, it took me 4.5 years to get done with my undergrad because someone else is paying for it. I finished the 2-year graduate program in 18 months because I was paying for it. Okay? That's a little hint on how to help get your students through the 4 years. Now, it all would be funny if it ended there. Ha ha, he doesn't use his degrees, he's got 3 of them, they're on the wall, that's all funny. The problem is I'm still paying the student loans 15 years later. 15 years, and that's 2003 prices. So, maybe what you want to do is figure out what you're going to do or what you would be good at, or at least give yourself some direction on what your options are with some type of career testing. That's the very first thing you want to do. All right. So here are some questions when you get to campus and you start doing some college tours, or you've done some. Even after you do them, you can actually call the admissions office back and ask some of these questions. Remember, this is a business relationship we're getting into, so you kind of want to know things like this. What criteria is most important here at this school for admissions? Now, if you ask an admissions officer that question and you get an answer back from them, what can you do with their answer? How can you use that to your advantage? Well, if they tell you what criteria is important for admissions, and you take notes on that, when you get to the essay section on their application, guess what you can do? You can feed that information right back to them. Hey, I'm this kind of person. You're reading their information. How many of your students graduate on time or in 4 years? Hint, they're probably not going to tell you this because at least most public universities, it's not very good. But that's an important one to know, and maybe a follow-up question to that is, what programs do you have to help my students stay on track while they're in school? How many students wash out, don't come back after freshman year? That gives you an idea of their selectivity. Right? Are they casting a really wide net for those first-year tuition fees? How many students apply to your school and how many are accepted? And what is your enrollment yield? So of the students who are accepted, how many of them actually come to school here? Those are going to give you an idea of what they're doing in the admissions process. Keep in mind that if you're starting to receive literature in the mail from colleges, is anybody getting anything like that in the mail? It starts earlier and earlier. The colleges don't know anything about you as a student right now other than you are of a certain age or you registered for a PSAT or an SAT, because they sell those lists to the colleges. That's where that information goes. So if you get a letter back that says, we think you would be great for our school, that is all marketing. They don't know anything about you. Nothing. They're trying to drive their application number, because if they drive the application number up and they still accept the same number of students for their business model, what happens? Well, they make more money in the applications, but they also look a lot more selective. So when you ask about the selectivity of the school, it could just be that they drove a whole lot more applications that year. Here's an example. This was from a few years ago. There was a very small private school in Arkansas. I think it was Washington College or something to that effect. It doesn't matter. The point is, they actually raised their tuition 100% year over year. Now, they grandfathered the students who were already there in, but the new students coming in, the tuition rate went up 100%. They also doubled their applications that year. Because, see, in our mind, we look at the cost and we actually apply some type of value to the education based on the cost. It's literally the only thing we buy where this happens. So they're doing all sorts of things year over year to drive their application numbers and make themselves look more selective, which then means next year they can charge more. It's just a vicious circle that they spin. So these are some really good questions you might want to ask. I'm sure you can come up with a bunch more. And in addition, what's that placement record? That's probably one that needs to be on the list too.
Do any of the ranking magazines like U.S. News and World Report or Forbes answer those questions?
Not really, because they're giving you general information about a specific school, if that makes sense. you're going to get the specific information about that school from the people at the school, from the admissions office, from the financial aid office. So that's where you want to ask specific questions like that. I would suggest those questions in particular if you're going on a tour of a campus and it's being led by a junior or a senior. No offense, you want to get that information from the admissions office. I would pay a visit there and find out the name of the person who is responsible for your name in the alphabet, and maybe ask, hey, can I get 5 minutes with you? If you're doing it in springtime of your junior year, they're not doing a whole lot with applications right then unless they're a rolling admission school. So that'd be a good time to be asking questions like that. All right, so this is kind of hard to see. You don't have to know exactly what's on here. I just want you to see a color-coded list of schools. This is just something that we do to kind of help you figure out, or maybe something you can even do, because this is kind of off of an Excel type spreadsheet. But when you do all that career positioning work and you kind of come up with, okay, I think I want to do this, I want to go into business or some science field, then you can come up with a list of schools who have those majors that you need. And what you're looking at on the screen here are the SAT scores for those schools. Top 25%, the median, and bottom 25%. So if you know that information, then you can kind of figure out, okay, well, where do I fit in this picture with these schools? So blue and green on this is just saying this particular student's in the top 25% based on what they took last year. Yellow and orange doesn't mean you won't get in. It just means you're probably closer to the middle of the pack or bottom 25%. And what this means is at the end of the day, you probably don't want to have 6 or so schools from the yellow and orange area. Those might all be full pay type schools. So you probably want to have at least 3 or so from that green or blue area. The difference between green or blue, at least in our field, is just blue is an area where you might actually get admissions to the honors college, and that's a different level of financial aid altogether. So I was just trying to show you a way of kind of compiling your information together as an example. Now, we always say no less than 6, no more than 10 schools. I'll explain that in a minute. What's next after we do this? After we have colleges that we're going to apply to, what do? Well, we got to go through the admissions process. When you're doing admissions, of course, you've got to get organized. Whatever your filing system is going to be, you're going to have a lot of paperwork from a lot of different schools. They all have a little bit different dates and deadlines, a little bit different way of doing things. They all think that their way is the best way, of course. Make sure you follow all of their requirements. Many times if something says it's optional, it's not optional. That's generally a test, trying to figure out if you go a little bit above and beyond. Okay? There are some schools that say do not send this in, then do not do that. But if they say that an essay is optional, generally that's a little bit of a test. Make sure to start sending thank you letters. For example, if you do talk to an admissions officer at school, it'd be a good idea to write them a thank you note after you get home. Get into the habit of doing that sort of thing. That makes a difference. Okay? Now, I want to talk about, this is a little bit more getting into the financial part of this, because this is where we deal with leveraging as far as students are concerned. So this is what I call a tale of two boats. So you've got students in the first boat, and you've got students in the second boat. Now here's what the colleges generally will do. When we look at a list and we say, hey, I'm in the top 25% of these schools that I'm looking at here, or I'm in the bottom 25%, you're in one of those two boats. It doesn't matter what your scores are. It matters what your scores are in relation to the schools you're looking at. Does that make sense? And so that's how you figure out, with that particular school, which boat am I in? If you're looking at NC State and that color codes as yellow or orange, you're probably more likely in this boat over here on the right. Conversely, if NC State is blue or green, you're over here in this boat. Now, what does that mean? Well, what the colleges typically are trying to do is balance out how many students they take from these two boats. If you're a superior student in relation to what that school typically accepts, then what they can do is they can take your average scores and balance out 3 or 4 students in the other boat who are not as superior in achievement as you are. That's how they do their business model. So they can take you, give you a rebate on your schooling, and accept 3 or 4 other students over here in the other boat and make them full pay, or they will full pay, and those students will be thrilled they got in. It's all a matter of your perspective on it, right? That's what they're doing. Now, I have an article that's, let me think of the title of it now. It's called Financial Aid Buying Student Talent. It's a little dated. It's a few years old, maybe 5 years old. In the article, it's a financial aid, unidentified financial aid officer talking about this exact process right here. And he says in the article, one of the most telling quotes was, "We use the available financial aid that we have." That's merit aid, grant money, either one. We use the available financial aid that we have to develop the student body profile that we desire. The final line said, "We buy the students that we need for our class." If that doesn't tell you it's a business, I don't know what would, right? So the point is, you as the consumer have to know this is going on and figure out which boat you're in with the schools you're applying to. Obviously, your academic achievement can move you from one boat to the other, right? That's why this is so important. This is where academics and finances meet in this process. And it might be the most important part of understanding. And I'll tell you that families should pick this up and understand the tale of the two boats. They never forget this image, and when they're going to tour a school, they think in their mind, now, which boat are we in with this school? Which boat are we in with this school? And that's important to know. Okay, so the tale of two boats. That's what they're doing on the business side of this. Now, with financial aid, generally this is a kind of a rolling over and over every year. There's about $30 billion a year available in what's known as institutional financial aid. This is money that the schools have to essentially rebate to students. All right? It comes in the form of financial aid, and if you'll go ahead into the next slide. With financial aid, it's grants, which are generally need-based, and merit money, which is generally academic-based. But what's really been happening over the last 7 to 8 years is this has all been kind of blended together. And what the colleges are doing a lot of times, I can't speak for all of them, but a lot of them are essentially using this like it's one big pot of funds that they have to use, and they have to determine based on your need, your financial need, or your achievement in academics, which pile they can take the money from. All right? This is a book, the Ultimate Scholarship book. I pulled some quotes out on the next couple of slides. Scholarship winners are not superstars. Rather, they are the students who have prepared, invested the time to create applications that highlight their strengths. One of the ways to do that and highlight your strengths is to submit, and very few students do this, is to submit an actual academic resume to the colleges. Okay? We have some templates we use for this, but you can go beyond the application and highlight your strengths using something like an academic resume for the schools. The best strategy is to impress upon the colleges, the college scholarship committee members, that you have a brilliant future. They're marketing to you, you need to market back to them. So as I mentioned, there's 3 types of aid. Grants and scholarships, those do not have to be paid back. Federal work study, typically that's more in the graduate area, although you do sometimes see that undergrad and student loans. Yes, loans are actually considered financial aid. This is what we call the super secret formula that the colleges use. You're going to want to write this down. Colleges, there it is. This is what they use to determine how much financial aid they're going to give you. So I'll give everybody, if you want to take a picture of that, you can. But I'm sure that's pretty clear to everyone anyhow. All right. Has everyone heard of FAFSA? Of course, that's not the formula, right? This is what they use. This is the formula that the colleges use, the FAFSA for. FAFSA is called the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. The funny thing about it is most of the students who are getting institutional aid are not getting federal aid. They're getting some type of merit-based aid or that type of thing. More than 90% of that aid is merit-based in what they're doing with this. In our experience, very few of our students ever get any type of federal aid. But this form has to be completed to basically open that door to the institutional aid from the schools. So FAFSA is about 10 pages long. It's interesting because when you open it up, it's very confusing in the way the questions are asked. It's 10 pages long between student and parent information, and there's a lot on it. It's confusing, and I think it's intentionally confusing. It looks very much like a tax form. And there are a number of pitfalls on this particular form, but but ultimately what comes out of this is something called an EFC. Has everybody heard of EFC or somewhat familiar with it? Okay, EFC is your expected family contribution. So this form, when it's submitted, goes into the Department of Education, and they take that super secret formula, and they calculate this number, which is your EFC, and it comes back to you and says, this is what we think you should be able to afford each year for school. Now, in just about 10 years of doing this, I've never had anyone ever agree that that number is correct. Okay? And also, when you get the form back, it's something called the student aid report that comes to you in the mail. There are no dollar signs on the student aid report. So they give you a number. It says your EFC is $28,112. But it doesn't have dollar signs. It's just a number. It doesn't tell you what it means. I think it's intentionally misleading, so you're not asking questions. Oh, they got our information. Great. We're in the system. That's it. But what they're telling you is this is what we think you should be able to afford for school each year. Now, on the FAFSA form itself, I believe it's question 89, 90, 91, somewhere in there. It asks you, as parents, please list the sum total of your investments. So I'm going to give you one huge pitfall that comes from this particular form. It says, list the sum total of your investments. Now, how many people do you think actually include in there their 401k and their IRAs and things like that? Because those are what? Those are investments. However, it doesn't tell you on that question, it tells you back on page 2, but it doesn't tell you on that particular question, do not include your 401k, your IRAs, right? But it's way back on page 2 where you didn't read the instructions, because no one does. If you look at page 2, it'll put you to sleep. Okay? But it is buried in page 2 where it says, do not put that information on questions 89, 90, 91. Don't you think it would have been good to tell you that right there when you're answering it? But they didn't. So now most people do it that way. And what just happened to that EFC? It's probably inflated. It's probably a lot higher than it should be. And this form has to be completed every year your student is in school. So if you do it wrong the first year, you're probably going to do it wrong the years following. Now, if you make a mistake on your taxes, your CPA is going to come to you and say, hey, we got a mistake. We got a letter from the IRS. We can fix this. It won't happen again. You're all set. That doesn't happen with the FAFSA form, right? So keep that in mind. It is a little bit tricky. Pay attention to all the instructions on it. As far as credits and deductions and other things that come out of this whole thing, I always say consult the CPA. I know how most of them are, but I can't tell you in a presentation how all that works. But you can Google that information. There are certain tax credits and deductions available to you while your student's in school, and you want to make sure you are up to date on all of those. All right, so let me put this together for you guys. This is kind of a timeline of what you want this process to look like. This is the one everybody wants to take a picture of. So we're in junior year, and those of you who have seniors, you still have time to do all of it. We've actually gone all the way up to December, January of senior year, and got the kids and students on path for what they need to do. So it's not too late for anyone in the room. But of course, I've already gone through most of this. Career search and aptitude testing, standardized tests, kind of begin down those roads and get that sort of work done. Obviously, you want to check the status of your high school path. Are you on pace to graduate? That's kind of important. I mentioned earlier the resume. You want to start compiling this information about a resume that you want to submit to the colleges. Begin the search for scholarships, start your college visits. That's kind of what junior year looks like. And so the rest of junior year, maybe the spring, is narrowing your list of schools down. Senior year is finish strong academically. If you have the opportunity to take some challenging courses in senior year, you need to do that. That looks really good to the colleges. However, if you need to finish early and go to work, and there are reasons for that, that also is good information for the colleges to know. But if you have the opportunity to finish strong academically, do that. Maybe take the SAT, ACT again. It's not a problem to have to take them in October and that type of thing. If you need to, on your applications, there'll be a space where you can list that you're taking an SAT or an ACT later. The colleges will know that it's coming. Maybe refine that college search. Our team would tell you no less than 6 schools to apply to and no more than 10. And that has to do with your financial aid leveraging. If you apply to 2 or 3 schools in your process, when the financial aid office gets your documents, they're going to look at this and say, we've got a 1 in 2 or 1 in 3 chance of getting the student, and we don't have to work very hard in that case. Conversely, if you apply to 15 schools, they're going to say, well, we've got a 1 in 15 shot of getting the student. So the sweet spot really is 6 to 10 schools. And ideally, if you apply to 6, 3 of them want to be in your green category where you're in the top 25%. September through November, and really that should say September through November 1st, is when your applications go in senior year. So our seniors are doing their applications right now. And we want those all done by the end of October, no later. I don't care what the dates and deadlines say on the form, unless they're before that date. I don't care if it's April of next year. We want them all done. There are reasons for that. They're important. If that's for me, I'll get it later. Let's picture that the deadline for applying is December 15th. Should you wait till December 15th or December 10th to turn that in? Think about it this way. Would you rather be in the stack of documents that sit between that admissions officer and their Christmas break? Or would you rather be at the front stack at the beginning of the year when they're fresh and they're going through the information? Which one do you think might help you out a little bit? Okay? So use those types of things to your advantage. Resumes, letters of recommendation, scholarship form, all of that. That's what has to go in there. Now, October 1st is when your FAFSA forms need to go in, your financial aid forms. And again, October 1st is the first date you can send those in, and I would suggest you get them in within the first 2 weeks of October because financial aid is on a first-come, first-served basis. So you'd rather be at the top of the stack on those as well. If any of you had students go through in previous years, that October date has changed. It used to be January 1. A few years ago, they changed that, and they changed the tax information that they use and all of that. So that's an important thing to learn. December is when institutional forms for some of the colleges go in. Now this is key. We haven't talked much about this. We've talked a little bit about leveraging and that type of thing. But when you apply for financial aid using the FAFSA form, by March and April of your senior year, you're going to receive award letters from the colleges. This is where it gets really tricky, in my opinion, because the award letter is different than your acceptance letter. Your acceptance letters may come in December and January, and they may even say things like, congratulations, you've been admitted, and we'd like to offer you the Park Scholarship for $10,000. That is not an award letter. There is a following award letter coming. Sometimes it says it on the acceptance letter, a lot of times it doesn't. And the award letters come to the student's email address. They used to mail these to your house, but now they just email them to you. So a lot of times they're missed. So the award letters show up, and one of the things you probably need to know is, well, is this a fair award? So what I would recommend you do is wait till all the information comes in from the schools that you've applied to. Consider the awards you received. You can even, if your favorite school didn't offer as much as school B, you can contact your favorite school and appeal. You can actually ask for a reevaluation of your award. You can appeal for more aid. And that is a big process we go through every year. And it's something you need to know. But it's very tricky the way this goes on because you get your acceptance letter and you have until May 1st to actually declare. Your seat is guaranteed until May 1st. All right? But in between, say, December, January, and these award letters, you start getting letters from the school you've been accepted to saying, send in your deposit, confirm your space, pick up your housing, get your preferred housing now, right? And nothing in those letters generally ever says anything like, but your award letter is coming. So why do they want you to send in the deposit?
Want you to commit.
They want you to commit, right? What happens if you commit? What does that maybe do in the financial aid process? Are they more or less likely to help you out at that point?
They got you, so
They got you at that point. You've committed. You've tipped your hand to them to say, hey, this is where I'm going. It would be akin to running on the car lot and, running up to the car dealer, because we all like that, and saying, I'll pay anything for this car. What does it cost? We would never do that. We always try to stay back and negotiate as best we can and work that deal out. So that's what you want to do here too. Just know that more information is coming. It's going to come in March and April. It's generally a flurry of activity right before May 1st that you have to deal with. So don't short circuit all this work you did on FAFSA and everything you did by accepting too early. That's a key part of all of this. Acceptances are responses to May 1st, and you've got your housing applications. That's really what it looks like. Yes, ma'am.
What if you apply early decision?
Good question. My team would tell you never apply early decision. There are generally schools that do early decision will also let you apply early action, which follows the same timelines, but you're not committed to that school. There are a few certain circumstances where you might apply early decision, so I shouldn't say never, but they strongly discourage that if possible, because you really do limit your financial aid options at that point. Also, there are about 6 different ways that schools can do early decision. That's not just a one-size-fits-all, so it kind of depends on what the school is you're thinking of and what their rules are in early decision. They may actually let you apply to other schools. Some of them are a little bit more lenient on how they do that. Good question, though. All right, so this is an example. It is small, I know, but these are examples of award letters from previous years. And generally what you'll see, so you know this is an award letter, is it will say something like, you know, financial aid award package or something like that on the form, and then it will say fall term and spring term. That's what it's going to look like. That's how you know it's the award letter. And it'll give you kind of a, you know, total of what everything's going to cost. And it usually looks just like this. It has a listing of the different scholarships if they're going to do that. It may just list a loan. So it's not guaranteed you're going to get financial aid by doing this, but just know this is what they look like. I went to Tennessee and I didn't learn an Alabama letter up there, so I think I get some credit for that. All right, let me do a quick case study and then we'll be done and I'll answer some questions. You can go ahead and forward on. Really what we want to do with this and with all of your case studies, I just want you to see there has to be a marriage of understanding between student positioning and financial positioning. This is one that people like because this happens every year and it happens to most students in some form or fashion. So what you're looking at here on the left side is a student, this is the same student applying to 2 different schools. One's a private school, one's a state school. So your private college is a $62,000 a year sticker price, right? And family filled out the FAFSA form, came back, and their EFC is $15,000 a year. So they were told, hey, you're expected, we believe you can pay $15,000 a year. So if you subtract $15,000 from the 62, I'm over here if this will work here. You subtract the 15,000, you get 47. This is the need. So this is what the college starts working on, is this number right here. Now, a lot of your private schools have a different need formula for financial aid than your public schools do. So in this instance, the need formula is 100%, meaning they're going to examine 100% of this $47,000 and determine what they're going to do. So in this area, they're going to provide you with gift aid of about $39,500, and you're going to have to come up with a loan of about $7,500. So between the EFC of $15,000 and your loan and their gift aid, your out-of-pocket is $22,500 for that school. Now, part of this, it's not always this way, but part of this is that this private school probably knows who their competitors are. That you want them to know where else you're applying. You want them to know who their competitors are, because if their sticker price is way out of line and they want you as a student, they're going to have to reduce their costs. That's just how business works, right? So your state school starts out over here, and they're half the cost of the private school. This happens a lot. And the point behind this, guys, is I don't want you to eliminate any of these schools over here because of that sticker price, because this happens a lot. Now, you probably don't want to apply to all $62,000 per year schools, but if this is a dream for you, don't wipe the dream out because of the sticker price. Yep.
How do they know what other schools you're applying to?
You're going to tell them on the application.
You do.
You're going to list them. List them alphabetically. Don't put a star by your favorite or anything like that, right? But just list them so that they know. You want them to know that information. It used to be that when you did your financial aid forms and you released that information, you had to do it through that, but they eliminated that part of the process. But you actually want them to know this information. So same family, so the EFC is the same. Financial need now is much less because our sticker price is lower. But here you are, public university, and their need formula for calculating how they're going to help you is different. So immediately, you've got to come up with money out of pocket. You've got to come up with this, $7,200 down here. This is your gap funding. They may come back with a $4,800 scholarship, right? You need a loan of $6,000. So if you add all of this together, EFC, your gap funding, all of that, your net cost for that school are $28,200. For a school that started out with a sticker price of half of the other. This happens all the time. Again, so the point is, don't get dissuaded necessarily by this as a sticker price. Again, if that school wants you as a student, and you're in that boat on the left, right, they're going to come down in their cost to help you out. That's just how this works. All right. So I know I went through a lot, and you probably have questions. I'll be happy to answer any of those at the end. Of course, we went through the importance of your standardized tests and selecting schools and criteria and all the right questions to ask, and retirement in college and all those types of things. I always say, look, it's important now more than ever to prepare well in advance for college, and the reason is you cannot go back and do this over again. The most valuable time for a student is that year that they're applying to school, right? Junior and senior year. You can't go along and figure all this out and go back and do it over again. I guess if you have more than one child, you can, but then that's probably not the best way to do it, right? So start preparing now, put a plan in place on how you want to do this, and students and families have to be positioned well together. At the end of the day, what you're looking for, I think, probably most everyone, is the best fit school. You want your student to succeed and be happy and thrive at a school, and you obviously want to pay the least amount you can for that. That's where these two things have to come together. Press that button one more time. Thank you. So just I teach classes on retirement planning, and we use this concept of a machine, and this is how we build income and all of that. But our families that go through our particular programs and all of that, we do this here too. We build in what's called a college expense buffer. So the point is that we look at all of this, I would say holistically. I think that phrase is thrown around a lot, but we really do. We want to make sure that this college expenses for 1, 2, 3 or more kids are going to fit into what your long-term plans are as well. I've seen plenty of families that I do retirement planning classes that are in their 60s. They can tell you some unbelievable stories about what college was like 15, 20 years ago when their kids were going through and how it's affecting them right now in their planning. So just keep that in mind. That's part of the course that we do. You don't have to do all that if you don't want to, but I always make sure we offer that to you as well. So this is just letting you know, look, I told you earlier that we do a gift certificate, and you can come in on the very, let's see here, which package? I think it's on the very first packet that you have from the class. There is on the very last page, it should say evaluation or something to that effect on there, very last page of the packet. What does that say at the very top, ma'am? Yeah, what does that say? Yeah, response form. You say registration, but you've already registered. So the response form. Now here's what we do. From my experience, I throw a lot of information at people. It's kind of like drinking through a fire hose. I know that. There's a lot coming at you. You may have questions. You're not quite sure where everything is. If you want to come in and talk to me about how you are matching up in all of this and you just have questions, that's what I do. That's what the gift certificate's for. If you're not sure about your schedule, just check the box on there. It says, we want to come in, we just don't know when, and we will follow up with you, okay? It's been my experience, too, that if you have heard some things and you think you might want to at least get some further advice on that, I would check that box. If you go tomorrow or wait till tomorrow to do that, you may forget why you thought all of that, and you might miss a really good opportunity to help yourself and help your family, okay? So just keep that in mind. When you come in to meet with me, what I'm going to do is spend about 45 minutes to an hour with you. We're going to go through your questions. I have a lot of questions I'm going to ask you. I will tell you about what our program looks like and how it works. I will tell you what it costs. I cannot do that tonight. That's the deal I made with the schools 10 years ago because I don't sell anything here. But I'll give you all of that information, and I do not even let you make a decision when you're in my office. You take it with you and you go home. And I give you a week to think about it, talk about it as a family, pray over it, whatever you want to do. And if it's something you want to proceed with, at that point we will engage with you, and we'll talk about more of what that looks like. But I want you to know when you come in, this is not I'm not going to trap you in the office and put a hard sale on you. That's not how I work, okay? I'm just going to give you more information about what this looks like and how to do it and how we do it, how we might be able to help you. I will also tell you if I don't think we're a good fit. And that happens from time to time. I will tell you, hey, I can help you manage this process, but I don't think there's going to be any financial aid for you and your student. Because I've been doing this long enough, and I think you need to know the truth right now, up front. But if there is the opportunity for that, I'm going to tell you, hey, I think you're in a really good spot, and I think we can help you maximize that. I don't know what it's going to look like, and I won't make any guarantees. But I'll tell you that too, because I think you need to know the truth. Okay? That's what it looks like if you come in to see us. If you don't, and I never see you again, and you recognize me at Sam's Club, don't hide behind the giant mayonnaise jars. Okay? Feel awkward about it. Just come up, say hello, and tell me how you're doing. I'd love to hear from that too. And with that, I will end the session for tonight. I hope was this beneficial? Are you glad you came?
Yeah.
Okay. If you have any questions, I'll be here for a while. If you'll take your registration form or the event form and just leave it with Natasha on the way out, I'd appreciate that. It would also really help me from an IRS standpoint if you would fill out your information on that form. I've already got your registration, but this allows me to verify that I actually taught the class and to deduct my expenses for it. And by the way, I know that everyone paid a ticket to get in tonight. I want you to know that all of those proceeds go back to the school system. We don't keep any of that. And we actually add to it. So I think when we're all done, we have another class Thursday night, I think we're going to be giving about $500 back to the school system. That's just something we like to do as part of this. So thank you for registering. I want you to know your money's not just going, certainly not going to me, it's going back to the school system. We like to make sure you know that as well. Okay? Thank you guys. Appreciate you coming out. Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
What about the strategy of going 2 years to community college and transfer?
That's a great one. We hear that all the time. She asked about if anybody wanted to know the strategy of going to community college and then transferring after a couple of years. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that approach. I know what my team would tell you is you probably want to go through this whole process and have that as a backdrop, because when you go that route in 2 years, the financial aid process is not available to you then. So even if you're a superior student going through community college, you may not get any aid, or you probably won't get any aid on the back side of it, because the colleges can't use any of your academic information from high school. Good question though. There's nothing wrong with it, but you just should know what the costs are related to it.
So you laid out the state schools and then of course the private, and then with Ivies, is there, in your experience, have you had, from a merit standpoint, is there any type of financial, do they give anything?
Oh yeah, they do. A lot of, and they're kind of all over the map, and you can usually look, but they'll tell you what percentage of students receive, merit-based or need-based aid. But they do. They certainly have formulas just like what you saw here.
Because my experience with my older son, he's at Georgetown, but it's really, when it comes to the financial part of it, it's like they really gave nothing.
A lot of it's based on demand too. You'll see that with public universities. Recently, Clemson used to do exactly what South Carolina did as far as giving tuition rebate to in-state levels for out-of-state students applying from here. And this is where the athletics come into play. It's become a trendy school, and their applications have literally doubled.
Right.
So they don't do any of that anymore. So a lot of it has to do with the demand for those schools, as far as what they do. It gets to a point though when you're talking about Ivy League schools where they literally get the best students from around the world applying to those schools. So they are actively engaging and giving money because they're trying to attract those students away from their competitors.
Right.
If you go on YouTube, you'll see all sorts of admissions office, and there's one on Amherst, and you can hear the admissions officers talking about, well, this student applied, they've got siblings at Harvard and Yale. They know who their competitors are, and they're trying to get this kid away from going there. So that's that competitive process that we're talking about. Good question. Anything else? Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep, absolutely.